Hello and welcome to Chat with Dr. Kat. I'm Dr. Kat. Nice to see all of you today. Today we're going to be talking about grief. Basic grief. What are the stages? There is one that we usually follow with 5 stages of grief, and we also look at another one that includes 7 stages. That I'm going to be talking about all of those different things today. If you'd like to be a guest viewer and you have a story that you would like to share, please go to chatwithdrkat.com. Let us know. Also, if you would like to be a guest expert on the show, again, chatwithdrkat.com. Let me know. Okay, let's get right into it. Let's talk about grief. Grief is a heavy, heavy emotion. All human beings experience grief. I mean, there's some of the extreme disorders where maybe they lack that empathy that would lead them to that. But on average, all of us experience some type of grief. And here's the thing. We all really do experience grief in different ways. However, we are able to fit into these 5 categories. Now, I talked about 5 stages and I've talked about 7 stages, but the initial one, 5 stages, that was developed by Elizabeth Kübler-Ross years ago, an amazing individual who really experienced grief and the death process in people and made it more of a beautiful, acceptable thing, not something to fear. So some of the things I'm going to be speaking about today came directly from Elizabeth Kübler-Ross. Make sure if you are experiencing grief that you maybe research the stages of grief, see what is going on with you. As always, if your grief has gotten to a level where you feel that you want to maybe harm yourself or would like to end living, please reach out. Reach out. There are so many options, so much help out there to help you through your journey. Let's go back to the basic stages of grief. Now, here's the thing about it. It doesn't matter what faith you are, what race you are, what age you are. You do tend as human beings to fit into these 5 categories of grief. So I usually use an acronym DABDA. So it's denial is the first stage. Then you move into anger. Then you move into bargaining. Then you move into depression, and then you move into acceptance. So in looking at all those different stages, that doesn't mean you go in that order. You could go in that order. You could bounce back and forth into different stages. Now, the one that has 7 stages of grief has added things like the first one being the state of shock, when you're in shock over the grief. Shock and denial tend to go hand in hand. Shock can keep you in a frozen state of not knowing what to do. Denial, because you can't believe that it's happening. You're not acting on or reacting. But shock is a big one. Very, very big one. And not everyone goes into that. Maybe if there was an expected death. But even with expected deaths, it's, my goodness, I can't believe that I'm no longer caring for this individual. I can't wrap my head around it. Did that happen? Wait, that's that denial. That's our brain trying to connect with what just happened. So when we look at the different stages, again, it could be you're working through the process 6 months down the line and you think, wow, did that really happen? Wait, am I living this life? So again, you can bounce back and forth. Completely normal to move throughout the process. Now, anger. Anger is anger maybe towards the person for leaving. Maybe it's, the person walking away. And again, depression and the depression that comes later can be a direct result of obviously the anger and going through the process of the bargaining and everything else that we're going through. And that level of depression can be huge. But let's go back to anger. When you have anger from grief, and again, grief doesn't necessarily have to be just around death. It could be loss of a relationship, loss of a job, loss of a friendship, anything that is surrounded around loss. If you have an adolescent that maybe was kicked out of school, or maybe they were struggling and wanted to get into a particular university and they didn't get into the university. Loss. All of that. So when we look at that, say if a child, an adolescent, didn't get into a particular university, then it would be like, I can't believe it. I can't believe I didn't make it into that university, but I did everything I was supposed to do. My gosh, what? They don't want me? I can't believe they don't want me. I did everything I could. What did I do? What did I do wrong? Maybe it was the counselor, that type of thing. Maybe if I contact them, the bargaining phase, maybe if I contact them and I change their mind, there is a possibility, but maybe if I did it, that's that whole bargaining. Then it goes into, the sadness and the depression of, I can't believe I didn't make it in. I'm not good enough. I don't know what I'm going to do now. Working through those process. Then acceptance gets to the point where I've been accepted into other great universities. I'm going to be okay. And if I don't like where I go, then I can always reapply as a transfer. But I'm going to be good. I got into other great universities. I'm going to be okay. Or I'm going to choose to go to community college and then reapply. That's your acceptance. So you can see as you go through the stages of grief and loss, that's what occurs. So when we look at those different stages, do you have to go through all of those stages? You don't have to go through all of those stages, but the majority of people do tend to go in and out of those different things. Now, once you're heavily into grief, maybe it is a huge loss maybe by death or a breakup, loss of a marriage, loss of a relationship. Maybe you've been working in a job for many, many years and you walk in and you find out you've been laid off as a total shock. You go through this experience. Now, here's the thing. There's 3 different aspects of grief. You have the emotional part of it, you have the physical part of it, and you have the cognitive part of it. When we look at the emotional part, that is the feeling of sadness, anger, frustration, guilt, all the different emotions that we feel, that kind of heaviness of that sadness that is emotionally going on. Physical, it does manifest physically. Maybe we have aches and pains, our joints hurt. There's a physical feeling of maybe nausea. Maybe nausea to the point of throwing up. You're so worked up over the sadness. It just, maybe it affects your eating. It affects your sleeping. It affects the enjoyment in previously enjoyable activities. That is the physical part. Cognitive part. It can affect your memory. You could have memory lapses, compulsive thoughts, replaying the breakup over and over and over in your head. That compulsion to try and problem solve what has already occurred. And that's the thing, when we get trapped in our thinking, that obsessive thinking, which I call going down the rabbit hole, you just deep dive and spiral all the way down, boom, till you make it at the end. And you look up and you're trying to get your way back through all of your thoughts. I've said this in another episode, how we talk about our brain and how we attach to the negativity. And it's because it goes into problem solving, fight or flight. Our bodies from beginning of time have been into this place of fight or flight. So we tend to get stuck sometimes in our critical thinking, in our problem solving, fight or flight. Do I stay or do I go? And it's an immediate response. But our brain lights up when we're challenged with those things. Again, when we experience joy, we're experiencing joy. There's no need to problem solve. You just experience. So again, our brain tends to light up and become more active when we are experiencing problems, sadness, negativity. So you can imagine when you're experiencing grief, how locked in you can become when you are experiencing those things. So again, those are the three areas that affect us with grief: emotional, physical, and cognitive. So you want to be aware of those things. Here's the other thing about grief: loss, sadness, everything that comes away from, say, a breakup of a marriage. Here's a big part of it. You're grieving not only the person, even if you're mad at them. Even if you're mad at them, you think you hate them, all of those different things. Maybe they left you, you left them. Even the person who has done the leaving feels the loss. And a big part of it is the loss of the fantasy. The loss of the fantasy of what could have been. And the biggest part of treatment is getting over that fantasy. I give this example because I think it's powerful. A woman and a partner lose a baby. Maybe it's miscarriage early on. Maybe it's stillborn. But even with a miscarriage, let's just bring it down to a miscarriage within those first 19 weeks. When you get into the later weeks, it's a whole other level of grief. But say you find out you're pregnant, you're excited, you've been trying, maybe you haven't been trying, but you're excited and happy. You go into the doctor, everything is great. You're at your, maybe that 6-7 week appointment, and then you go back for your 12-week appointment and you find out you have a miscarriage. What exactly are you grieving? At that point, there is no life anymore. You aren't going to be having a baby. The pregnancy is over. What are you left with? You're grieving the loss of somebody who didn't even exist. Now, I'm really breaking it down. It's the loss of the fantasy of what that baby was possibly going to be. Maybe a parent already started visualizing playing ball, or maybe visualizing taking to dance class, or that first breath when that baby comes out and you're holding that baby. You have been wanting to have a baby for many, many years, and you wanted to feel the pregnancy, but it didn't happen. But some women suffer from miscarriages for years and years and years, still talking about it. And it's because it's the loss of the fantasy of what was going to happen. We all have fantasies. If we're in a marriage and the marriage breaks up, and even if it's a bad marriage, it's the loss of happily ever after. I was going to be happily ever after with this individual. Maybe not perfect, but I wasn't going to be out there dating again. I was going to be able to grow old with somebody. Have our children, if you already have children, have our children, our grandchildren at the holidays to come over for different events. Now it's gone. Now it's anger. It's having to decide whose house is going to be where. When you go through child custody, that's why I always say, when you're going through child custody, there's so much anger that's taking place because oftentimes people get stuck in that phase of the sadness of letting go and a failed marriage in their mind. It failed. It did not work. But the children are also going through extreme grief. It's grief of finally realizing that the parents were just really good friends that got together, got married, or have been together and had a family. Now, your children are both related to you. They share DNA. But, with my husband, he's a friend. He's somebody I met. There's no blood tie there. And it's a hard concept for children to get because all they see is family, their family, and that they came from the parents. It's a huge loss for them. It's a huge loss for them. So when you're stuck in that anger phase of grieving, just remember to maybe shift a little and see what's going on with your children having to go from house to house, or hearing that the disdain in somebody has for their other parent. Create the tone for peace. Here's the ideal. If you have a loss of a marriage or a relationship where children are involved, you will always be the children's parents. That will never change. You may not be husband and wife or partner, wife and wife, husband and husband. That may not happen. Okay? You've decided to move away from that relationship. But those children come from your relationship. That's their family. They won't lose that family. That'll always be there. So why not work out your issues? Maybe have a monthly dinner together. Maybe it's still doing holidays together with now the extended family. This is where you have to dig deep hard and change your story to make it about the children when you're experiencing so much anger and frustration. Here's the other thing. Grief is huge. Grief is something that is with us all the time. We're experiencing tiny little micro losses that go on in our life, little tiny things. Maybe something didn't happen the way we wanted it to, happen, and it weighs on us. And there's other things that are huge. As human beings, everyone experiences grief at some time or another, because as human beings, we've accepted the fact that people will die in our life. No one lives forever. So we have that in us. So, when you see somebody, say a fellow coworker, or maybe it's a friend, or maybe it's someone you don't know, and you walked into a public bathroom and you see someone crying, maybe a little, "Hey, are you okay?" might change their day. If somebody is being angry, or maybe they're not the politest to you, you can still be frustrated that they're not being polite. Maybe it's a waiter at a restaurant. Maybe take a moment to say, are you okay? Because you seem really frustrated. Are you okay? Sometimes being seen can have an impact. Maybe they'll say, "No, you know what? I'm having a bad day. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I'll do better." Maybe they continue to be frustrated. I don't know. Maybe they would say something that opens up. I'm not sure. And maybe some of you don't want to take that on. I mean, for me, it's an occupational hazard. But stop to think. Maybe someone is behaving the way they are because they're suffering, and maybe not take it on to ourselves. Let's give people grace when they're grieving and they're going through things. Now, here's the other thing. If you are experiencing grief, it's time to work on yourself. Get you out of the grief. Grief can anchor you down. Anchor you down. This is one analogy that I always come up with. It's like being on a boat. Your boat is your life. The anchor is your depression, your sadness. So you go through life, okay, and you think, okay, I'm feeling better. Things are going good. Okay, great. Oh, okay. All right. Oh, things are looking up. All right. And then you go this way and you're like, oh gosh, I'm sad again. I'm feeling down, or things never go my way. And the boat keeps turning, because the boat is on water. Okay. But it's anchored. So we may have other views that being anchored down can give us, where we think we're getting better, but we're still anchored. We're still anchored down. The whole point about life is to be able to go. Maybe we get anchored down for a moment and then we pick it up and we keep going and we see the world and we get out there. We see our life. We see our community. We have friends. We have other things that we could be doing in our life if we're not anchored. This gives us a false sense of living by being anchored down. So what can you do? Self-care. Start taking care of yourself. Make sure when you are feeling grief and sadness and everything else that you get up, you take a shower, you still exercise, you eat well, you get out there, you make sure you eat, okay? Sometimes when we're sad, we don't eat enough. We eat too much. You want to make sure that you're monitoring yourself. Eat healthy. Do things great for yourself. Still get up and go. Make sure you go to the doctor. Make sure you clean your teeth. Go to your annual checkups. Make sure you take care of self. Here's the other thing. Get out. Be involved in community. When you take yourself out of a situation and put yourself in a community situation, it allows you to step away from your anxiety. You know, I was speaking to somebody, I was a guest viewer, and she lost her son to death. One of the hardest things to experience. And I don't want to say recover from, you just learn better coping skills as you go on through life. But she's putting herself out into the community, speaking about her story, sharing with other people. Those things are great. It takes you out of that. It gives you into the giving community. How about just going and community service? Just getting out there, doing something to get yourself out of the grief, doing for others. Look, I think doing for other people is something we should all be doing on a regular basis. Within reason, some people do far more than other people. But I think it should be done on a regular, whether you're grieving or not. But when you're grieving, what it does is it takes you out of your own sadness and it gives you perspective. It gives you perspective in life. Like some of our episodes, you're going to start seeing some of our episodes with our guest viewers talking about their life. You know, some of the feedback that I've been receiving has been, you know, it's given me a different thought about how I was raised. I had it amazing. What I experienced was not trauma. It was just life. What these other people have experienced is true trauma. It puts things into perspective. For other people, it does validate. Yes, I did go through that. Yes, that was tough. But I don't want to have that be my story. I want it to be a different story. And the last thing to think about, if you're experiencing extreme sadness, is really looking to see what works. Now, that's the other stage. Remember, we talked about the 5 stages from Elizabeth Kübler-Ross, and we've had other people that have added to that. Remember, the one being about shock and guilt. The other one is about seeing what works, testing out what works and maybe what doesn't work. Maybe seeing one therapist. If you don't connect, let me tell you, there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of therapists. There's therapists who are online. There's therapists that are in person. There's therapists that are in your community. There's therapists, maybe you want to go seek a pastor. There's so many different options out there. If you don't like a particular therapist, please go find another one. If you don't connect, find another one. It is something, whomever I work with, I will say to them, if for some reason you don't feel a connection, and not that I'm not pushing your buttons because that's a different thing, but if there's not a connection or you feel that you need more or less, please let me know. But if you feel that you're not fully connected, let me give you a referral. I want you to feel connected. You need that connection. Your therapist is somebody who's your person that's going to work with you. Okay? Work with you. And because grief and loss, especially if you're dealing with severe loss of death or maybe a horrific divorce. A therapist is somebody that you can have and work with for a period of time. And again, these are my beliefs. You work with them for a period of time, and then you may taper it down, and then maybe you don't see that therapist for a few years, but they're always there, and then you come back to them. You have this relationship with them, so you're not retelling your story over and over again. It's, oh, hey, how have you been? Okay, let's talk about it. Oh, yes, remember when this? And that therapist pulls from all the experiences because they know you. Go find somebody that knows you, that's not going to pull from you. You know, sometimes when you talk to friends or family members, it's great, but then they want to be heard as well, right? It's got to be give and take. It can't always be about you. That weighs heavily on people. And sometimes when you have things like grief, it weighs so heavily on you, then it weighs heavily on the people around you. And then they start walking away because they don't know how to help. It's not because they don't have empathy. They don't literally know how to help. So seek help if you get to that point. If you find yourself wanting to hurt yourself, there are hotlines, suicide hotlines that are out there, which we will have on the website as well, chatwithdrkat.com. Please reach out to the hotline. You know, what could be horrific today may not be horrific a week later. But right now, when we're in the thick of it, we don't think it's going to get better. Life ebbs and flows. It will get better. But it's so hard to see. And again, when you're anchored down and every view you look at is sadness, it feels like there's no other options. You know, I've always said to people, there's absolutely no reason to lead to get to that place of wanting to commit suicide. Yet people feel that way. That is a real emotion. So for the adolescents out there that could be watching, parents that are watching when dealing with sadness with their children, always tell them that there is help out there, that doesn't have to be an option, because sometimes kids are impulsive, very impulsive, and they're reactive. And sometimes they make a choice that could have been solved and it would have been better the week later. So, grief is hard. Grief is something that every human being feels. I think every living thing feels. There's more and more research that is showing about how animals relate to when there's death. There was one documentary that I just saw about elephants. So moving, about how when one dies, they all gather around and the things that they do to help. Grief is a natural experience of life. What is not natural is if we get stuck and we stop living and we stop experiencing joy. So, we all experience it. Let's make sure we don't get stuck there. So if you identify some of these things of where you've been or what you're going through, please seek help. Seek help. Look to the internet. Get powerful advice there. I'm glad you're watching today about grief. And here's one other one I wanted to tap into briefly. Is sometimes we've experienced grief living within a relationship because the relationship is not giving us what we need, and how that tapped into the yellow room, that we constantly ask for a certain type of relationship or how to be treated. Just remember, paint the room yellow, and you keep coming back and it's a bed, it's a this, it's a that. And it leads to living within sadness. And I'm reading every single response that you are writing to me. And I'm responding because I want you to know I hear you. I see you. Because sometimes when we're in a bad relationship, we don't feel seen. We don't feel important. We don't feel heard. And then we become sad and we grieve. And then we become angry and we're stuck there and we feel resentment and we feel that we have just resigned ourselves to that way of life. You don't have to. If you choose to stay in a relationship, and this is what I always say, you've got 3 different paths. I mean, there's a lot more, but let's just go with 3. You can stay in the relationship in the condition that is in, continue to grieve, loss, feel miserable. 2, you can walk away from that relationship. Or 3, seek help, start helping yourselves create change in hopes that that relationship will be rediscovered again and you will find that love and excitement and trust again. I mean, the other path is you work hard, it doesn't happen, and then you decide to leave. You've got options and choices. Allow someone to help you through the process. But just remember, I hear you and I'm listening. And if you have any thoughts or feelings, please comment. That is me responding. It's not anyone else. It is me responding. And let me know if you would like to come on the show and tell us your story. Have a great rest of your day.